Hello everyone, welcome to the video where today we're diving into the dark and complex world of sociopathy, exploring what it is, how it manifests, and what it can look like in real life. Sociopathy is often associated with traits like impulsivity, lack of empathy, manipulativeness, and disregard for social norms. But these are just words on a page until we see how they play out in the life of someone who lived on extreme edge. In this video, we'll take a closer look at the notorious punk rocker GG Allin, a man who became infamous for his shocking, chaotic, and self-destructive behavior. We'll examine how the traits of sociopathy were not just present, but taken to the extremes in his life, shaping the way he interacted with the world, his art, and even himself. Through the lens of Gigi's story, we'll see how sociopathy can transform into a lifelong rebellion, unraveling in a mix of chaos, violence, and a desperate struggle against authority. So let's dive in and explore how these traits manifested in GG Allin's life and what they reveal about the mind of someone who was willing to push every boundary to the breaking point. Alright, so imagine you are at this small, grimy punk rock club. The place is packed, the crowd is buzzing, and there is this weird tension in the air because everyone knows what they're about to witness is going to be completely nuts. Then GG Allin storms on the stage. He's not there to play a typical show, he's there to absolutely destroy everything in the sight, including himself. Within minutes he's stripping off his clothes, and it doesn't take long before he's completely naked. The music is blasting. But GG's performance goes way beyond just the songs. He starts cutting himself, dragging broken glass across his chest, or bashing his head with a microphone until he's bleeding all over the place. The crowd's either freaking out or egging him on. It's like everyone's bracing for what he's going to do next. And then it gets even wilder. He doesn't hold back when it comes to bodily fluids. There are moments where he just squats there right on stage and takes a dump. And then, as if it wasn't enough, he starts smearing it all over himself or throwing it at the audience. People are either dodging out of the way or embracing the chaos, but either way, it's total mayhem. The thing about GG Allin's show is that the barrier between the performer and the crowd doesn't exist. He's not just on stage, he's diving into the crowd, throwing punches, and people are swinging back. It's like the whole show could break into a full-on brawl at any second. Some people came to see him precisely because they wanted that unpredictability. They wanted to see if he would go further, as he did last time. And he often did. There were times when his antics got even more extreme, like performing explicit acts on stage that most people wouldn't believe unless they saw it themselves. He would sometimes masturbate on stage as a part of the performance. It wasn't just a brief shocking moment. He often integrated it into the chaos of his act. On some occasions he would attempt to engage in sexual acts with the audience members or simulate them as a part of his stage antics. While it wasn't always clear how consensual or prearranged these moments were, they definitely added to the mayhem. GG Allin would also perform acts that mimicked sexual intercourse on stage, sometimes involving props or objects. He would use these acts to heighten the shock value and the intensity of his performances. Nothing was off limits, everything was about pushing the boundaries to the absolute extreme. Now, let's have a look at where the roots of such unhinged and insane behavior might reside. The story of GG Allin's childhood is like something out of a dark and twisted coming-of-age tale, where all the typical stages of human development get distorted and stretched to grotesque extremes. If most people's lives follow a path that goes from innocence to rebellion to maturity, his took path cranked up the pressure and then shattered into 1,000 pieces. He was born as Jesus Christ Allin. Yes, that was his real name. He was born on 29th of August 1956 in Lancaster. His life began in New Hampshire in a town called Groveton, in a log cabin devoid of electricity and running water. His father, named Merle, a deeply disturbed man obsessed with religious fanaticism, claimed an angel told him to name his son after Jesus himself. That name alone set the stage for a life that was anything but ordinary. The father was not only a fanatic but also a violent, paranoid man. He would sometimes dig graves in the basement and threaten to kill the family, promising that one day they would all end up there together. The threat of death wasn't just some abstract fear for little GG. Allin's brother and a future bandmate Merle pronounced Jesus as GG, giving him his lifelong nickname. That threat was part of the reality when he grew up. Just imagine, put yourself in this child's shoes for a minute. What an incredible amount of stress hormones fill his blood on a constant basis. GG Allin later described living with his father as a primitive existence, more like a prison sentence than an upbringing. However, he said that he was actually thankful for it, as it made him a warrior soul at an early age. GG Allin was drawn to rock and roll from a young age, with the radio being his initial gateway to music. He learned to play the drums and developed a passion for music that would become central to his life. Even as a teenager, GG was a misfit, an outsider. In junior high, he struggled academically and socially, being placed in special education classes and repeating a grade. His rebellious streak became apparent as he sometimes attended school in drag, defying norms and expectations early on. GG and his brother Merle, who played bass, formed a close bond over music and began playing together in bands during their school years. They performed in several bands where GG started to experiment with confrontational stage behavior. Though these early acts were relatively tame compared to what he would later become known for. In the late 70s, GG discovered punk rock, which greatly influenced his musical direction. He initially played drums in a band called Malpractice during this time and briefly settled down, marrying and having a daughter. However, his domestic life was short-lived, and he eventually abandoned his family to pursue his increasingly chaotic lifestyle. He even became involved with a 13-year-old girl, reflecting the troubling direction his life was taking. Musically, GG moved on to front the band The Jabbers, where his confrontational antics started to gain attention. The band developed a following on the bar scene in Manchester, New Hampshire, setting the stage for GG's transformation into the notorious figure he would later become, known for pushing the boundaries of punk rock to its extremes. In the story of GG, we see how the cornerstones of a normal childhood, safety, nurturing, guidance, were replaced by constant danger, neglect, and insanity. Instead of experiencing the warmth of a parent's care, GG learned to navigate around a household filled with fear and tension. This oppressive atmosphere warped his development from the beginning. As a young child, he didn't have the luxury of forming a normal identity. He was constantly trying to break away from the suffocating control of a despotic father. When his mother finally took GG and his brother and left the father, it seemed like there might be a chance for something resembling a normal life. But by that time, the damage was already done. The constant pressure and twisted environment had set GG on a different path entirely. By the time he hit his teenage years, he was rebelling not just against parental authority, but against all forms of control. It wasn't the typical teenage rebellion where kids push back against curfews or homework. This was raw, unfiltered rage against everything society had to offer. As he grew older, the normal rites of passage, finding hobbies, making friends, developing sense of self, got replaced by the thrill of pushing limits. The absence of healthy boundaries didn't just manifest in the typical teenage experimentation with drugs, alcohol, or punk rock. It became an all-encompassing pursuit to shatter every norm, to take everything to the extreme.
I hang out with Jim Beam, and I do not record for popularity. I do it for myself only because it's my life. There we go.
What might start as a form of expression for most kids, like writing a journal or playing in a garage band, turned into GG violently rejecting society itself, turning self-destruction into a lifestyle. The grotesque forms of rebellion in his stage acts, cutting himself, defecating, fighting the audience, weren't just random acts of shock value. They were a desperate and exaggerated form of pushing back against the suffocating authority that had surrounded him since birth. GG's entire adult life became an extended teenage rebellion, a continuous, relentless attempt to separate himself from any form of control or expectation. It was as though he was still trying to escape from the despotic father of his childhood, except now that father figure has expanded to symbolize the society itself. Under conditions that had warped his development, from an early age, what would typically be temporary phases of expression of youthful angst in a normal life became lifelong obsessions. The grotesque and deviant forms his rebellion took were his way of carving out a separate identity, an attempt to declare freedom from an authority that in his mind was everywhere and unending.
The real true nonconformist children in this country are sick and tired of their parents, their schools, their people force-feeding them what to do. I'm bringing us to a revolution against the government, against the police, against any form of society that is trying to put us down and restrict us in any way, shape, or manner. You cannot conform. You must be a true nonconformist. To hell with what your parents have to say.
Okay.
I am the man.
Okay.
All you have to do is listen to what I have to say.
Okay, well,
you can look at violence from two sides of the spectrum here. Listen, you can look, okay, if I'm a victim, I can grow strength from being a victim because I'm not going to let it happen to me again. And if I'm the predator, if you people out there, life is too short to play the waiting game. If there are people out there, if you got something I want, what do you got? The first thing you're going to tell me is, why don't you submit it on paper? Why don't you hold up a picket sign? No, I'll put a gun to your head and I'll take it because I ain't got the time to wait.
His entire life was a prolonged fight for liberation, but one that took on a form so extreme it became a living nightmare, a never-ending grotesque performance of trying to break free from invisible chains. Although we cannot label GG Allin as a classical sociopath, rather we can say that he exhibited many sociopathic traits, topped with self-destructive tendencies that indicate underlying psychological issues beyond sociopathy, such as severe trauma or a personality disorder with borderline or narcissistic features. Moreover, his lifestyle most probably was not solely characterized by a cold, calculated pursuit of personal gain, as seen in some sociopaths, but rather a chaotic and often self-destructive path. We can observe sociopathy manifestation in GG Allin's life through how his behavior consistently broke from accepted norms, showing a complete disregard for the safety and well-being of himself and others. Sociopathy is characterized, among others, as mentioned above, by traits like impulsivity, lack of empathy, manipulativeness, and the need for stimulation, and these were blatantly apparent in his actions and lifestyle. In GG Allin's case, these traits were taken to the extreme, becoming core parts of his identity, what we also see in some of his quotes. If I wasn't a musician, I would be a serial killer. Everything I own can fit into suitcases and a footlocker. They're going to get me sooner or later. Let's just hope it's later. Death is a very important part of life. I believe you can make forces of good and evil work for you to get what you want. If someone comes right up and asks if they can tape it and say that they will give me a copy of something, that's usually cool. But when I see someone sneaking around with camera, I will smash the thing, because I've had them used against me too. Everybody is an enemy. I hate everybody. I am not part of any scene. I do my own thing. My mind is the machine gun, my body is the bullets, the audience is the target. First, there was his blatant disregard for the consequences of his actions, not just for himself, but for the people around him. His stage performances were chaotic and violent. He would self-mutilate, throw bodily fluids at the audience, and physically attack people during shows. These actions weren't just acts of rebellion. They showed a complete lack of concern for the physical harm or emotional trauma he was inflicting. The absence of empathy, a key marker of sociopathy, was clear in how he treated others, not as human beings but as objects for his own chaotic expression. To him, it didn't matter if someone got hurt or disgusted. The spectacle was the only thing that mattered. His impulsivity and inability to plan for the future were also prominent. He lived in the moment to a dangerous degree, indulging in extreme behaviors like drug abuse and risky performances without any consideration for long-term effects. GG Allin would frequently attack audience members with no provocation, often punching, kicking, or headbutting people seemingly at random. These outbursts weren't premeditated. They were spur-of-the-moment reactions driven by pure adrenaline and aggression. This unpredictable violence was a hallmark of his impulsivity. His lifestyle was one of a constant chaos with no attempt to create any form of stability and structure.
You know, the whole thing with society today is, you know, go to school, get a job, get married, and have kids, and take out loans, and dig a fucking hole that you can never get out of. And to me, that's just a way of the government chaining you down so that you can never get out of their grip. And somebody like me, who can do whatever they want, I never have to pay taxes, I can, you know, fuck whoever I want, I can go here, I can go there, I can, you know, if somebody calls me, I can go tomorrow, I don't have to think about, well, I gotta take care of this. It's like I can just go.
Sociopaths often struggle with impulse control, acting out in ways that provide immediate gratification without regard for what comes next. And this was absolutely a defining feature of GG's existence. GG Allin's impulsive behavior frequently landed him in legal trouble. He was arrested numerous times for offenses ranging from assault to indecent exposure to drug possession. Then there is his manipulativeness and use of shock value as a tool to gain attention.
I'm out to inflict pain on people as much as I'm in to inflict pain on myself. And that pain creates strength, power, and endurance, because if you put yourself through that tragedy every day, you could face that tragedy when it hits you.
While he presented his stage acts as anti-establishment statements, there was also a sense that he thrived on the chaos and the reactions of others. Sociopaths are skilled at manipulating emotions, and for GG, shocking the audience was a form of control. It kept him in the spotlight, fed his need for attention, and maintained his image as an outlaw. In many ways, he was using people's outrage and disgust as a means to fuel his own persona. GG would often promise or threaten to do things that he knew would stir up attention, such as his infamous declaration that he would commit suicide on stage on Halloween. He didn't go through with it, but the statement itself was a manipulative tactic to generate buzz, keep people intrigued, and perpetuate the mystique of GG Allin as someone who might do absolutely anything.
I may have gone to the hospital, and I may have done these things, but I never cried wolf. When I say I'm gonna kill myself on October 31st, 1990, I'm gonna do it.
People say they're gonna do shit, they don't do it. I'm going all the way with it. The ultimate rock and roll sacrifice is death. When I die, I don't die, my soul goes on. It's another adventure. And then I can accelerate into the next life and still leave my blood here to be the blood of rock and roll. And it was still be here. I'll never go away. Even when I'm dead, I will become stronger on earth, and I'll become more powerful in the next life. There is no death. If I kill myself, that doesn't stop the mission at all. The mission goes on and on and on.
Allin's manipulative nature extended to how he treated his fans. He fostered a cult-like environment where fans felt a connection to him as a leader of sorts in his anti-society, anti-establishment mission. He would use incendiary language and extreme ideology to rile up his followers, encouraging them to embrace self-destructive behavior as a form of authenticity and rebellion. His fans were often willing to get involved in the chaos at his shows, sometimes even participating in the violence or degradation he instigated. Allin knew exactly how to provoke and manipulate the media. His interviews were filled with provocative statements designed to shock and offend, ensuring that coverage of him would always be sensationalized. Another aspect is his chronic need for stimulation and danger. Ordinary life didn't satisfy him, and he constantly sought out activities that pushed the limits of what was socially acceptable or even physically safe.
My motto is, if tomorrow ain't here, you live for today. Do whatever you want to do today, spend it up, do it hard. And if tomorrow gets here, you worry about that. You have to seek death to accelerate life, which is actually true, because you're living so fast and you're putting so much time, so many years in such a little bit of time, that if I was to die tomorrow, I'd probably still live more years than most people do anyway.
This need for heightened experiences is a common trait in sociopaths, who often find normal experiences dull and unfulfilling. Lastly, GG Allin's warped view of morality was central to his persona. He rejected conventional ideas of right and wrong, instead creating his own set of rules where violence, degradation, and chaos were not only accepted but wildly celebrated. He didn't feel remorse for his actions. In fact, he seemed to take pride in the chaos he created. His view of morality was distorted to the point where destructive behavior was the only form of authenticity he recognized. In GG Allin's case, the symptoms of sociopathy weren't just present, they were dialed up to the most extreme levels. His life can be seen as an extended case study in sociopathic behavior, taken to its outer limits, where the combination of early trauma, a chaotic lifestyle, and deep-seated psychological issues formed a perfect storm that manifested in shocking, self-destructive, and extremely violent ways. Wrapping our analysis up, let's take a closer look at the symbolism of GG's outrageous on-stage acts as ultimate manifestation of his identity. So, why to defecate on the stage? For GG Allin, it reflects his deep rejection of societal norms, disdain for the audience, and nihilistic worldview. Defecating on stage is a blatant violation of social etiquette and public decency. In a society where cleanliness, order, and self-control are valued high, Allin's act was a direct attack on these principles. It symbolized his refusal to conform to any standard of acceptable behavior, as if to say that he rejected all rules and constraints imposed by society. By doing something considered utterly disgusting and taboo, he was challenging what people consider normal and confronting them with the raw, unfiltered side of human existence. It was like an all-out war against society's rules, a way to show the ugliest parts of human nature right in your face, but with shows that often ended in chaos, with cops showing up or venues pulling the plug. It was clear he wasn't just performing music, he was unleashing something raw and untamed that few dared to touch. His rejection of societal norms, embodied in Defecating on stage, can be traced back to his upbringing under a despotic father. His father, as we already saw, a religious fanatic who imposed rigid and oppressive rules on the family, creating an environment filled with fear, control, and violence. These early experiences influenced Allin's later need to break away from all forms of authority and constraints. His father didn't just set rules, He created an atmosphere where absolute control were exerted over every aspect of the family lives. GG wasn't just a kid dealing with curfews or punishments. He was growing up under the shadow of a man who made threats about digging graves in the basement and spoke about killing the family. The rules weren't merely strict, they were suffocating and life-threatening. This extreme form of control cultivated a deep-seated resentment toward any form of authority or standard of behavior. If his father's rules were about total control, then GG's public defecation was about absolute freedom. Freedom from any kind of constraint, whether it was societal expectations or the authoritarian rules from his childhood. Moreover, his father's strict religious beliefs and obsession with purity and sin may have played a role in shaping Allin's need to embrace the grotesque and dirty as forms of rebellion. His performances didn't just reject normal standards of behavior, they inverted them, reveling in what society deemed most unacceptable. It's as though he was saying, if you want to control and purify me, I will go to the opposite extreme and embrace the filth. This rejection wasn't just a departure from societal decorum, it was a deeply personal rebellion against the moralistic and despotic control his father had imposed on him.
And by them condemning me, what they're doing is condemning the whole underground scene in general, and we can't be stopped, and I won't be stopped. Bunch of narrow-minded, hypocritical puppets of society trying to kill rock and roll, and they can't do it.
Defecating on the stage was also a way to show disdain for his audience. It was as if he was saying, I don't care what you think, and I don't even respect you enough to maintain a basic level of decency. And also, it was also an anti-art statement, a critique of the commercialization of art and music. In a world where music and performance are often polished, commodified, and made into a product to sell, he was rejecting the notion of music as a form of entertainment to be consumed and turning it into a raw confrontational experience that couldn't be easily packaged or sold. GG Allin's act of defecation on stage straddled the line between a chaotic random shock tactic and something that seemed to carry deeper meaning. Whether it was deliberate or instinctual, it served as a raw rebellion against societal standards, a way of pushing his audience away while drawing them into the spectacle of degradation. It embraced the grotesque, inviting people to confront the ugliest, most primal aspects of existence. The act was both messy outburst and the moment that blurred the boundaries between performance, provocation and art, challenging what anyone expected to see on stage. This is it for today. If you found this video interesting and useful, hit those buttons like and subscribe, sign up for a session with me, contacts you can find on my website, the address is in the description below, and see you in the next video.